Earlier, we spoke to Dr. Timothy Koski, postdoctoral research associate in digital communication discipline of media and communication at the University of Sydney, who explained what the charges against Telegram's founder mean.
Well, in such cases is carrying a lot of weight there because there's not actually a lot of cases like this. In terms of why this has been happening to the extent that it's been happening, the way it's been targeting an individual person, unfortunately, one of the challenges is that we're dealing with a legal system that's a relatively vigorous legal system that would have had some grounds to engage with its prosecution, and we don't know all of the details of what they're accusing them of what they've seen. Until we have those details, it's maybe hard to say whether or not this is extreme. My sense that it is a bit of a cold water shock to not only Pavel Durov himself, but also to the social media platforms.
But can the owner of a social media company be held legally accountable for the way in which the platform is being used?
It's a little bit of a new question to have this kind of idea that somebody that's overseeing a service can be held as separate from accountable in the way that service is being used. I've seen people send to me questions about whether or not a car maker can be held responsible for a car that's used in a bank robbery, but that's not the case here. Telegram has a very active role in making sure that its system stays up. It has people seeing this content, and this is a choice that they've made. They could be more secure. There are groups that keep end-to-end encryption on so that all of the communication that happens is private, and Telegram doesn't do that, and that's not very well communicated. It's actually rather hard to turn on their end-to-end encryption. So they have that material there, and they know it's there. So a better case might be whether or not a taxi driver taking a bank robber away from the scene of a crime would be held responsible. And we do have laws around that. And it depends on whether or not they know there was a crime, when they found out, what they did when they did find out. So I think it's more complicated than that. This isn't a taxi either. And this is the limit that metaphors can take you to in a completely new environment. But again, it comes back to what exactly it is they're accusing him of.
Now, perhaps you can narrow it down and you can shed light for us to which the extent of which platforms like Telegram are required to cooperate with law enforcement in the EU. How does this compare to other jurisdictions?
Well, the Digital Services Act and the Media Freedom Act and other things coming down the European Union pipeline set out an entirely new kind of precedent for these social media platforms to navigate. But all of these social media platforms were previously navigating other contexts. Even though California has a bit of a laissez-faire attitude towards how things are running, it's all sort of implicit on the idea that they're going to play ball and that they're going to do the right thing, quote unquote. You can see in places like Korea and in China a very different attitude towards the way the social media platforms operate and a different way that those things are elaborated. What makes the European Union laws so special and what makes this French action so special is the implications it can potentially have for how these international social media platforms treat people that are in other countries that have nothing to do with what's happening in France. Telegram operates to a large extent across the global south, which is obviously doesn't include France. And so when France and European Union's regulations and policies impact the way they do their work, well, that could have a downstream effect for how people in Africa are able to interact and how people famously in Russia and Ukraine are able to interact.